Hey everyone, Doug here from 2 Plus Tough, and today I am sitting down at the conclusion of Bonesplitter's week, and we're just going to be sitting and chatting, talking about starting the army, because one of my side projects, now that we have a specific format for 1K armies, like 1,000 point match play stuff, is I want to have another separate army for that, and also to experiment with the new contrast paint, so I am actually picking up the Bonesplitter. Let me just pull my notes here, so we'll go through this in kind of an orderly fashion. But yes, I am. And so what I thought about while I was looking at the faction was that it's actually not super easy to jump into. It's almost like Fire Slayers before they had a start collecting box, whereas each of the kits, they make a lot of different options. They're not necessarily cheap. They're $50 for the box of Savage Oryx, and then $50 for the boars. You get quite a few models in there, so I'm not saying it's a bad value, but each one of those boxes has like a ton of different options for you. So the question becomes, how do we maximize our purchases? How do we look at army building? What are the allegiance abilities? Because this is a book that hasn't really been looked at in several years. And so that's what I'm going to do today. I'm just going to sit down, and this is kind of an over-the-shoulder. You get to hang out with me as I explore the book again for the first time in a long time, and come up with a plan to how to build an army. One thing I want to show you is I actually built 10 boars so far, and I painted them up with the contrast paints. That stuff, the browns, were made for fur. I'm just going to say that. If you're interested in bone splitters, there you go. If there is anyone in the chat, go ahead and let me know if you can hear and see me okay. And we'll go ahead and start jumping in. Chris hopped in and said, hey, evening all. Hello, hello. So, yeah, let's go down to the downward chem. Let's see if that worked. It did work. Okay. My browser was being a little funny. So I'll come down here. And so, yeah, like I said, this is a book that people haven't really looked at in quite some time. And one thing I wanted to do is chat about real quick is my kind of personal history with this army. If you don't know, so when I first jumped into Age of Sigmar, like with real force, I had some fantasy models I was playing around with when it came first drop. But when I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to building and painting my first like AOSified army, it was actually Bonesplitters. I had things were very different back then in terms of the battle line, because like the General's Handbook had just come out after this. It's funny, it has allegiance abilities and artifacts and spells, but it doesn't have points at the end like every other book, because it came out right in that weird time. Instead, it has the old first edition rules in the back, which I think is funny personally. So it's in that weird space right there. And so I had this army, had the battle line choices were very different back then, and so I had a lot of the basic stuff to kind of build up my force. And I started building one of the battalions, which we'll talk about, called the Cunnenruck. People just didn't want to play against me. They had read and seen stuff online where people built extreme Cunnenrucks, where someone's rolling, I think it's 260 dice shooting arrows, and it's just no fun to look at. It's no fun to play against or to play. And they assumed as soon as I said, yes, I am playing the Cunnenruck, that's what I was doing. And so people just outright refused to game with me. At the time, the local community was so small, I wanted to foster it and be a part of it, so I actually sold them off. It's one of the two armies I always say I regret selling, and so because of that, I'm back in them. No one says that they're overpowered right now, but I also think the pendulum has swung to the point where people don't know what they do anymore, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to skip the lore because I just spent the whole week talking about it. We're going to dive into talking about the rules. What's interesting is I kind of like the older battletomes because they have this huge story to go along with a unique battle plan. I like that kind of stuff. I'm a sucker for the little stories that put the faction in context. Okay. Oh, sweet. Got some people in the comments. Grimlock says, hey, just started Bonesplitter's Army this week as well. Thought it'd be fun forced together for meeting engagements. It's exactly what I'm doing. I love my Stormcast. They're not going anywhere. I have no plans to sell them. Skaven stuff I am clearing out, but I want my special snowflake army to be the Bonesplitter. So, jumping into allegiance abilities. First one is called War Paint. This one is basically in the lore, their tattoos come alive in battle. They're so powered up with Wa that They can pretty much deflect anything, and so I'm trying to make this at the right angle so there's not a lot of glare here. But basically, to put it really simply, you always succeed on a save roll of a 6, no matter the rend of the attack. And in addition, you have a mortal wound save of a 6 up. So that means, no matter what, you are getting a 6 up save against literally anything. Which doesn't, a 6 up, you're like, that's kind of crummy. It's 14-ish%. But the thing is that each of the models here, the lowest wound model is 2 wounds. So and it's a horde army, so it's going to be a lot of save rolls, and you're going to get those 6s more than you think. I mean, it's going to be more annoying for your opponent than they think about when they think about a 6 save army. So that's an interesting one. I remember liking that one because you always have a chance. You know what I mean? I like that. There's no rending someone out of existence. I think that's kind of cool. And then we have Monster Hunters, which is kind of a two-part rule here. The first one being, if a Bonesplitter unit kills a monster, keyworded, in the combat phase, the released spirit imbues them with courage. Basically, they don't take battle shock tests that round. If my guys kill something, they don't take battle shock. That's there's pretty low bravery across this thing, and of course, obviously, there's monsters went away for a little while, and they've come back in force with stuff like the Keepers of Secrets and, of course, Gristlegore. So I think it's getting more mileage now. Not game changing, just a little thing to be like, hey, if your horde got stuck in with something and they managed to kill it, I'm sure that, for example, the Keeper of Secrets, it's gonna lash out and hit them. Don't worry about it this round. So I like that. That's cool, especially because there's a lot of crap bravery in this army, for sure. In addition, this is the second part. If a Bonesplitter's unit is chosen to make its attacks in the combat phase and it is within 3 inches of an enemy monster, roll a dice before piling in and consult the chart. This is the Monster Hunter chart. So both of these things happen at the same time, but you roll a die. It's basically a D3. On a 1 to 2, the unit can pile in 6 inches in this phase instead of only 3. Of course, this is a horde army. That's massive to be able to get more and more bodies in. The result of 3 to 4 is stab, stab, stab. You can reroll any failed wound rolls for models in this unit that direct their attacks against that monster. Now, it's interesting here, if we look back at the first one, think about it for a second. It doesn't say you have to pile in to the monster that you're near to trigger this table. You just have to be near it, and you get that. So you can actually be near a monster and pile into something else. Interesting. Of course, stab, stab, stab. You have to actually do the wounds against that monster. And the last one here on a 5 or 6 is Berserk Strength. Each time a model in this unit rolls a wound of a 6 or more against a monster in that phase, the monster suffers a mortal wound in addition to any damage. With the amount of dice we're going to be rolling out here, that's pretty sweet. What is really, really cool, so it's in this phase, so it's only combat. There's no shooting, so the cut and ruck doesn't matter, nothing like that. So yeah, that's your allegiance ability. It's very, very simple. You just get a save that you can't go away. Most everything here has a 6 up anyway, but you can't get rid of it. There's a lot of wounds in the army, so you will be making an inordinate amount of those 6s than you would, for example, versus Plague Monks. Also have a 6 up save, but they're paper, whereas these are the strongest 6 up you'll ever see. So, as far as command traits, I might jump into that a little bit later, just because I want to look at hero options and stuff like that. It gets context, for the command traits and stuff like that. I do want to cover the spells because this is probably the most fun spell lore that Games Workshop has produced, in my opinion. And by that I mean they just do a whole bunch of random things. It's a good toolbox. You know what I mean? You have a ton of spellcasters, as we'll talk about here in a second. You can get battalions where you can have 5 or 6 dirt cheap wizards running around doing stuff, and they're cool. So the first one is a sniper, basically, for heroes and monsters. Casting value 6. If cast, select a hero or a monster within 20 inches, roll a dice. On a 1, it suffers 1 mortal wound. On a 2 through 5, it's D3. And on a 6, it suffers D6 mortal wounds. If the casting roll was a double, and the spell was cast, the target suffers an additional D3 mortal wounds. So that is pretty stinking cool. If a model is slain by the Squiggly Curse, you can add 1 to any further casting attempts made by the caster during this battle as he harnessed the magical juju power of his latest squiggly pet. So that's a neat idea. There's a lot of steps here, but basically, this never got used because I was playing these back in first edition. Arcane Bolt was just a sure thing 100% of the time. Whereas with this, you're like, I have that chance of rolling a 1. That's kind of crummy. It can only target heroes and monsters. You know what I mean? You can't pull a unit off of an objective, that kind of stuff. So it kind of got glossed over. But now that we live in a world where Arcane Bolt doesn't generally do that much, it got a lot more mileage, I think. Especially because of stuff like, what is it? Look out, sir. You know what I mean? Where there's no, you just target a hero. Boom. And you're going to see a reoccurring theme where if the casting roll is double, then blank. And that's to kind of lore-wise, as we talked about this week, this energy that they use is very wild and uncontrollable. And so if you roll, for example, like 2 4s, the spell is cast, it goes off. There's some other cool stuff you can do with that. But yeah. Anyway, so it's a cool little sniper spell. Has a chance, if you roll a 6 on that spell thing, it does d6 mortal wounds. Yeah, no. So it's cool. I like it. Anywhere between 1 and 9. 9's a pretty far stretch there, though. But second one is Hand of Gork or Mork. It says casting value of a 6. These are all pretty low casting values. If successfully cast, choose a Bonesplitterz unit. That unit doubles how far it can move and fly in your next movement phase. If the casting roll is double, this triple how far the unit can move instead. So yeah, you get to double your move and fly. So that means for all the troops here, they have a 5-inch move. That means you're going 10, flying over stuff. And then if you have the boars, they have a 9-inch move, so that'd be 18. So that's pretty stinking cool. I wouldn't count on the getting triple, but it's really, really neat. That's a cool utility one. That's just being able to like chuck a dude so far away. I like it. Next one is Brutal Beast Spirit. And that one is casting value 6. Again, if cast, select the Bonesplitterz unit within 18 inches. Until your next hero phase, you can add 1 to all run, charge, and hit rolls made for that unit. If the casting roll was double and the spell was cast, you can immediately select a different Bonesplitterz 18 inches and does the same thing. So we get to double up if you roll a double. These two do stack, right? So you could throw your pigs 18 inches forward, flying over stuff. They have fly the entire turn, so with your charge bonus, you can then charge over the front line, something like that. So that's pretty neat. Next one is Cunning Beast, which is a... I got a little glare on my end here. Casting value 6 again. If cast, pick a unit within 18 inches until your next hero phase. Your opponent must re-roll all hit rolls of 6 or more that target the unit. So I'm going to be looking at that when I play against Slaanesh next. Because if you don't know, Slaanesh, you get an extra hit every time you roll a 6, no matter what the weapon basically is. So that's Neato Torpedo. And then that's a cool little defensive one. Number 4. Oh, I went out of order. Sorry. Next one, I'll just go through them anyway. Bone Crusher has a casting value of 6. If cast, pick an enemy unit within 24 inches that is visible to the caster. Okay. The closer the target is to the caster, the more powerful the attack will be. And so this is more of an area of effect thing. Imagine like a giant fist of Gork coming down and just crushing everything around it. So that's kind of a cool thing. If the target goes within 6 inches of the caster, it suffers d6 mortal wounds. If it's between 6 and 12, I mean just a little bit further away, it suffers d3. And if the target is more than 12 inches away, it only suffers 1 mortal wound. So yeah, if the casting roll is a double and the spell is cast, you double the number of mortal wounds inflicted, but the caster also suffers d3 mortal wounds. So you just kind of explode. There's always a chance that your head explodes and there's too much energy going around. So that would be pretty cool. And the last one here, and I'll go through this and then I'll hop into the comments and I'll chat with you. I'll answer some questions. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask it and I'll get to it in just a second. Gork Morker's Warcry, casting value of 7, which I think makes it the highest casting value here. Everything else is a 6. We'll talk about why that's important in a second. Casting value 7. If cast, pick a unit within 18 inches that is visible to the caster. Roll a dice and add the caster's bravery to the result. Let's take a look at some of these caster braveries here. I do not remember. Okay, Wargog Prophet is your big caster. He has a bravery of 8, and all the other ones are 7s. Okay, so let's get some context there. That's nice. So roll a dice, add the caster's bravery to the result. Your opponent then rolls a dice, adding the bravery of the target unit to the result. If your result is equal to or higher than your opponent's, the target suffers D3 mortal wounds and is stunned by the deafening roar until your next hero phase. That unit halves the distance it can move, run, and charge, and it cannot be chosen to make attacks until all others have attacked. So this is actually a good point to bring up, that we're talking about activation wars right now as kind of the hot button term and all this stuff like that. I'm not a huge fan, whatever. But what I think is funny is that all of this crap started 2 years ago when like one of the first battletomes to have allegiance abilities came out. There are multiple ways in this book to make your opponent's fight last and let you break turn activation rules. And so we'll talk about those because they're all kind of hero related. I don't feel too bad about going through the units in this book because frankly it's a small book. So we'll talk about all that. But I just want to point out that it's not bad. You know, I mean, the armies that I think about fighting that I really truly need a unit to be forced to swing last are stuff that has a bravery of 10. So it's gonna be hard, right? I mean, even if I take it on my Prophet and he has an 8 and I roll a 6, okay, that's 14, right? But if I go against something with bravery 10, I have to equal or beat it. So he has to roll a 5 up. I mean, that's all right. It's all right. So it's not terrible. Like I said, I'm going to take a pause real quick and just check out the chat here. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. It's a lot of fun to see folks online. What I will do is we will do this here. Hello. Just wanted to make sure I didn't accidentally turn off my stream when I close out of the YouTube thing. Okay. Jared says I got white boars myself for the ice clans. Yeah, actually I'll go to the downward cam here and I'll show you. I've been playing around with contrast paints and I got a whole bunch of different tones and stuff like that. Just mixing the different browns together once they've been applied and doing some recessed shades on top of that. They're coming out really well and I enjoy it quite a bit. So let's see here. Oh, I already got Grimlock's comment. Hey from the UK. Love the channel. Glad to finally catch one of the live shows. Yes, Liam, I try, but I feel like the last few weeks hasn't panned out to do my live shows on Fridays earlier so I can catch people over in Europe because I want to include everybody. Let me get that out of the way. Hannah Gork's favorite spell. Jared. For me, it's got to be Hand and Cork. I do like that one. Just movement is life, especially when you're talking about army. You know, they're older, their rules aren't as great as some of the new stuff coming out, and so playing to the objectives is so important, and movement is the biggest part of that. Literally getting to objectives. So, Librarian of Hope. I'm trying to think of a ridiculous name for a Wargog Prophet. Got nothing. So I've already started to build lore for my army. And so mine is going to be Dugrog's the Big Oracle, but Oracle is spelled Orc with a UL at the end, Oracle. He will be the priestly leader of my Bonesplitterz clan, so war clan. Let's see. Hand of Gork is baller because there's no range. That is true. Just choose a Bonesplitterz unit. So you could have your Prophet on one end of the board, other guy on the other side, and you're just done. I like it. Let's see. Librarian Hope, too much math? There's not. Well, there can be too much math, and we'll get to that because there's a lot of micro bonuses in this thing, and if you can keep them all organized, you can do pretty well. Let's see here. Give me just a moment here. I'm catching up here. I find I use my Prophet less and less. But he's the best. He's a 2 wizard, two spell caster. 2 unbinds as well, which is important. Let's see. Tobias, question. Will there be when do you think there will be a new battletome for Bonesplitters? Do they even need one? I don't think they're hurting as much as, say, Gutbusters or something like that. I think Carriage and Overlord, in terms of books that have battletomes that need love more immediately, definitely Carriage and Overlords. But I have no idea. They don't tell me anything. So, okay, and I caught comments there. We'll head back here and we'll keep on looking. So, as I was kind of approaching the idea of army building, what I'm going to do is take a look at the different heroes. Actually, I want to start with the battalions. I want to start with the battalions because I feel like they are a fantastic way to design your army in terms of picking units and that kind of stuff. One thing that I pointed out in the lore videos that is still true within here is that Wargog prophets do not feature in any one of the smaller battalions. There's a bunch of smaller battalions and then the mega battalions, and I'm going to skip the mega battalions for right now. None of the smaller ones have a Wargog prophet in them. And that is the different rucks we talked about during the lore week. I think that was in episode 2 of the week. Starting with the Cop Ruck, which is the head of the giant beast that these things become when they go to war. And this, like I said in the video, is all about your magical power. And I will say, these two rucks, the Cop and the Snaga, are definitely the ones that interest me the most. So we'll go through them real quick. The other ones I'll touch on, but to me they're not as nearly as, like, I don't know, intriguing in the same way, at least. So the Cop Ruck is 2 to 5 War Docs. We'll talk about those in a second. And 2 to 5 units of Savage Orc Moor Boys. So that is your more quote-unquote elite infantry. And 2 of the War Docs. Now, for context, War Docs are your... Oh my gosh, there's so many battalions. Your low-level wizard. So a War Doc is fun because he's super crappy in combat. He's not where he's supposed to be. He gets Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and 1 spell that you generate from your lore, whatever about that. So he becomes pretty versatile. There's some cool artifacts for him. What is interesting about the War Doc is, on top of being a spellcaster, he has this cool thing where in your roll a dice for each War Doc at the start of the hero phase and refer to the following table on a 1 to 2. Pick with a War Doc or a Bonesplitterz model within 10 inches. That model heals D3 wounds. You can heal up some guys. Not the greatest, but that's all right. 3 to 4 is pick the War Doc or a Bonesplitterz unit within 10 inches. You can reroll save rolls of 1 for that until your next hero phase, which is important because, remember, you're always fishing for those 6s. So any rerolls you get, that's cool. And then 5 to 6 is the Weird Dance, which I love. Pick a Bonesplitterz unit, Bonesplitterz wizard, not unit, wizard, within 10 inches until your next hero phase. Add 1 to the casting and unbinding rolls for that model. So they could, again, this is a dance that is separate from their spell casting, so they could, in theory, roll that dice and give themselves a +1, or give the next wizard who has a more important spell the +1. Keep in mind, the casting values are largely 6s, with that last one being a 7. And that's the one I'm kind of the least excited about, was the 7 cast one. So, like, you can get your spell casting pretty good. I mean, you can get, you know what I mean? Like, 5 is not a lot to ask of 2 dice. So yeah, he's pretty cheap. I'm actually gonna give me 1 second here. We're gonna go on an adventure. We're going to look up the War Scroll Builder. I want to have the points right in front of me. We know that they did not get a point change. Bonesplitters. And the War Doc is 100 points even. So 100 points doesn't sound unreasonable at all for, you know, he's a low-level wizard. He's a hero. You can give him an artifact. And there are some fun-as-F artifacts in this book. You can give him an artifact. Unique spell from your spell lore, and then he has this little dance thing. I think he's a bargain, you know. And I think if you're talking about building minimum stuff, he is one of the best wizards. We'll talk about the other really great one here in a second, but yeah. So it's 2 to 5 War Docs and 2 to 5 the Savage Orc Moor Boys. Now, I do want to touch on them because they are probably going to be a part of my collection. So the More Boys, 2 wounds of pop, 6 up save, 6 bravery. Basically, they have 2 weapons. These are the guys who are like the elite ones who've lost their minds, where they ditch the shield. They just have 2 sharp things and they climb up the back of things and try to ride it. I'm going to cover this once for all the units. If they can take a musician and standard and all that kind of stuff, all the little accoutrements, if you will. Bone Totem. You can add 2 to the bravery of all models in this unit. That includes a Bone Totem as long as they're within 3 inches of an enemy, basically. So they get braver when they're in combat. They want to run forward and punch stuff up. So all of the units who can carry, totems and that kind of stuff, get that. It's really great. Savage Moorboy Boss. He makes an extra attack. The Skull Thumpers add 2 to the charge rolls of a unit that includes any Skull Thumpers, which stacks very well with the spell lore. My man, you just tuned in. 26 minutes in. I'm just going through some of the battalions that really interest me. Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything that was super important in the chat. I'll go back there and read through stuff here in a second when I finish this battalion. So, and that's across everything. So everyone gets into combat faster with their charges. Like it. Remember, this stacks with that spell that gives you +1 gear charges. It also stacks with something like Chronomatic Cogs, which gives you an additional +2. Chronomatic Cogs also gives you +2 to your movement. So if you do that Hand of Gork or possibly Mork, when you move more, you move a ton more. Very interesting. So, and the last thing here is they have 2 abilities that are really, really important. I'm going to tell you my thought process, okay? Power of the Beast Spirit. Add 1 to the hit rolls for any Savage Orc Moorboys as soon as a monster is slain in the battle. It does not say enemy monster. It does not say it has to be slain by this unit. I love it. I love it so much because a model that I had just now ordered this last week and I'm very excited to build up is a Rogue Idol of Gork. And I'm very excited about that. He is a monster. He has the monster keyword. And he thematically to me is something that my boys wouldn't hunt. I know, well, he has a bunch of rend and that's kind of important. But anyway, so you charge him forward like a missile. If the enemy kills him, it makes all the big hordes of dudes +1 for both of their melee weapons. They have 2. Remember, they're climbing up on stuff with it. I love it. The second ability is from their lore. So if you remember, the Moorboys would like climb on the back of monsters and try to stab it in the eye and the face and the throat and all that stuff. It's called the Death Ride. In your hero phase, 1 model in this unit can attempt a Death Ride. Pick an enemy monster within 3 inches of it and roll a dice. On a roll of a 1, 2, or 3, on a roll of 1, 2, or 3, the monster is unharmed. On a roll of 4 or more, it suffers D3 mortal wounds. The model that attempted the Death Ride is then slain unless the monster was killed. So you gotta kill it if you want your boy to live. That being said, I like it. I mean, I know it's probably not always the best idea because you're just, deleting a model, but I like it. What's interesting is, let's see. Pick an enemy monster within 3 inches of it. Yeah, okay, so you have to pick the model, and then that model has to be within 3 inches. I would say, so you can't do this derpy thing where you have your front row engaged in the monster and you pick someone from the back. No, you have to pick the model that's within 3 inches. He tries it specifically, so that's interesting. Anyway, so back to our Copruck. That's what it's made of. It's a whole lot of, you can stuff it full of cheap wizards, get yourself an artifact and a command point, and your Moorboys are there looking for a fight with some melee punch. The abilities you get for that are Savage Waw Energy, and add 1. I'm trying to breeze through the fluff text because in the old books they didn't have it separate. Add 1 to all casting rolls made by a Copruck Wardock that is within 12 inches of 20 or more Savage Orc Moorboys. If the Wardock is within 12 inches of 30 or more Savage Orc Moorboys, say that 3 times fast, add 2 to the model's casting rolls instead. If the casting roll is a double, you must remove D3 models from the nearest unit of Savage Orc Moorboys, as the buildup of Waw energy causes their heads to explode. So, what's funny is, like, you start taking, these little cheap wizards But when you do this stuff, you are all but guaranteed to get your spell off. Remember, you get you can potentially give yourself +1 just from your little juju dance, on yourself. And here you're talking between an additional +2 or +1 or +2. That's huge. Lord forbid you're near a piece of arcane terrain. This all casts on a 6. So that's just really, really cool. What I will say is, because there's not a ton of damage dealing spells in here, like you have that sniper spell and you have the one where it's dependent on how close you are to the enemy. I would mainly say like this is a good like brick to have in the center, and then use those wizards to buff everything else around it. Because the more boys are going to put in work, they're going to fight. They're one of your best fighters in this army, at least in terms of the infantry ones. But yeah, no, I think it's cool, and it's also the main ruck of one of my favorite war clans, which we'll talk about here in a second, because I'm trying to decide how to theme my army. But yeah, that's how that one works. I'm going to pause real quick before I jump into the next one, and just look in the chat and make sure I didn't miss anything. More boys is always a must. Cool, we got some boar fans here. I love it. Let's see. Get a green one, be funny, and cast the Hand of Mork. Let's see. Read the Savage Wall energy rule. It sucks at the end. Savage Wall energy. If you roll a double, you must remove D3 models. I don't. Here's the thing. I'm just gonna say this up front. People who value, I don't know how to word this. I love fun, wacky rules. I do. And I think that's the appeal of these armies that are all about being crazy and rolling tons of dice and random things happen. I love that stuff. So I understand why people don't like the Savage Wall energy, where if you roll a double, you remove D3 dudes. The thing is that's I'm fine with that, because I like the thematicness of a bunch of dudes' heads blowing up. In addition to a lot of the spells have a casting, if you roll a double and it's successfully cast, you do an extra effect. So you're still, you get both, right? You lose a few dudes because something thematic happened, but then you get a special effect usually on the spell. So I'm cool with that, but I understand. I do understand. Let's see. All right. Okay, just following up on there. So the next one here is the Snaggerruck. And the Snaggerruck is all about boars. Boars upon boars upon boars. So you get 2 Maniac Weird Knobs and 2 units of Savage Boar Boy Maniacs, which are the elite boars. And we'll look at them real quick. I'm not going to do this for all of the battalions, but these are the 2 that I'm really interested in this video. Is about me deciding to build Bonesplitter. So Maniac Weird Knob, and this is 2 of them. Yeah, 2 of them. Now lore-wise, this is the War Doc who trapped a mega beast spirit in his totem, his staff that he carries, and unleashes it at various points in the battle. So it really, he's basically, stat-wise, identical mathematically anyway, to the War Doc, just on a boar. All the boars move 9 inches. They all get reroll failed wound rolls when they charge that round. Specifically, obviously, for the boar. One thing that's different about him from the War Doc is he does not have the special dance, where you could just do whatever. He has the Juju Squig instead. Once per battle, a Maniac Weird Knob can unleash this energy to reroll a failed casting roll, which is fantastic. It's just good to have, I don't know. So, magic, he knows, let's see, attempt to cast 1 spell and unbind 1. And his unique spell, because he has one where the War Doc doesn't, is Bone Spirit. It's the spirit trapped inside of that big totem. Casting value of 4. Now, we've already talked about ways to get bonuses, so like 4 is a joke. It's great. If successfully cast, you can reroll hit rolls of 1 for the caster and any friendly bone splitters that are wholly within 10 inches when they attack until your next hero phase. If the casting roll was a double and the spell was cast, the caster and the affected units can reroll all failed wound rolls. I like it. He's a cool dude. Reroll hit rolls of 1 doesn't sound like much, and honestly, it's not as good, obviously, as reroll all failed, but, you know, the kind of number of dice you're throwing, especially if you charge in your boars, because that affects boars and riders. If your boars are rerolling failed wound rolls, that's pretty great. So you get 2 of those dudes again. They each get a spell from the spell lore. They can make your pigs fly, so to speak. Let's see here, and then oh, here they are. And you have 2 units of Boar Boy Maniacs. These are the elite version of the Boar Rider, and this is actually the ones that I'm planning on building with my boars here. I haven't built the riders yet, but we're getting there. I kind of test that contrast a little bit by bit. And so basically, they have 2 weapons in their hands. They have 2 Champas, which are 2 attacks, 4 to hit, 3 to wound, no rend, 1 damage. Not fantastic. That's all right. War Boar Tusks, again, it's 2 attacks, 4 to hit, 4 to wound, but they get to reroll wound rolls when they charge. And they get the same items and totems, right? You get +2 bravery when you're in combat, and you get +2 to your charge rolls if you have the instrument, the Boar Thumper. And their abilities are pretty interesting, where, like any boar unit, they get to reroll wound rolls when they charge. Maniac Fury, you can pile in an attack with this unit for a second time at the end of each of your own combat phases. That's important. It's like shooting, where it only happens on your turn. But it does increase their effectiveness, and also it means the double turn when you have a bunch of these guys in combat is brutal. Hack and slash, reroll hit rolls of 1 when attacking with this unit's Champas. Now what's interesting is that hack and slash, reroll hit rolls of 1 when attacking with this unit's Champas, which has 2 of them. But the hero guy, there's some weird synergy there, lets you reroll hit rolls of 1 for the caster and any friendly units of Bonesplitters that are within 10 inches. So kind of doubles up there. It only matters if you roll a double. So I don't know. So you guys are debating the behemoth or the gargant. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, so I mean that's kind of it's a weird thing. It's good to have the rerolls, especially on the boars when the turn you charge. I'll give you that one. So yeah, and for having those units, Maniac Stampede. Let me move my mic here a little bit closer to my face. When the enemies, I'm gonna skip the fluff stuff. In your hero phase, 1 Savage Boar Boy Maniac unit from the Snaggeruk can attempt to charge an enemy unit if there's an eligible unit in 12 inches, as if it were the charge phase. You can reroll the charge roll if the Savage Boar Boy Maniacs are within 10 inches of either the Battalion's Maniac Weir Knobs. If the charge is successful, roll a dice for each charging model that ends within 1 inch of an enemy model. On a 4-up, the enemy unit suffers a mortal wound. For each roll of a 1, however, the charging unit suffers a mortal wound instead. That's kind of ridiculous. I like it. It is pretty crazy. I'll give you that one for this guy. But basically, yeah, that's what it's saying is you get to charge in the hero phase rather than doing it later on. You get to reroll it if you're near a hero, and for each one of your dudes that ends within 1 inch of an enemy, they take a mortal wound on a 4-up. Not fantastic, but to kind of offset that, these are the units you're going to want in combat anyway. You know what I mean? Like, just giving them a chance to get there faster and faster. It's great. The fact that you can do mortal wounds when you charge, there's no downside to that. It's just weird that it makes you do it in the hero phase. Remember, this book was written at a time where all special abilities, for the vast majority of it, all happened in the hero phase. So, yeah. And then the reason I brought up these 2 battalions specifically, and the reason why I'll focus on them, is because looking at the mega battalions, which are pretty fun and thematic, these are actually the 2 war clans that I am split between making. I don't know which one I want to paint my guys as. So the Iceborne War Clan focuses on the Snaggeruk, which is the boar heavy force. And they use ice weapons and stuff like that. Their boars are notable for being gray and faster. Basically, if you take this All the boars move 11 inches instead of 9. And they have some pretty sweet rules where if an enemy monster suffers any wounds from a model from an Icebone War Clan in the combat phase, it can only be selected to attack that phase once all other eligible units have attacked, which is super cool. Basically, if I double up and have 2 units hit, even just say a Keeper of Secrets, he can only do his super Keeper Secrets BS about making people fight last once. The other unit will tag him, make the Keeper fight last. That's neat. I like it. Artifact of Power. What's cool is this is back in the day when artifacts of power were like optional, because this whole battalion was like not a requirement. They didn't force you into anything. So that's cool. That's an ice theme there. And then conversely, there is the Drakfoot, which focuses on magic users. They use that copper up we talked about first, which I find very intriguing. And basically for them, they have the Copruck and a Wargog Prophet. Juju Spirits. Any casting rolls made for a wizard from the Drakfoot Warcan that is double is successful, even if the total is less than the minimum normally required. So double ones will succeed in a casting attempt. However, your opponent still gets to unbind it, so if they roll, anything but a double 1, they can undo that. Now, it's not always the greatest, for that exact reason. They still have a chance to unbind it, but the idea of saying that it just increases your chances of success. It's pretty minute, but that's cool. Red Wah Paint. When a unit from a Drakfoot War Clan is affected by an enemy spell, roll a dice. On a 6, the spell has no effect on the unit being rolled for, though it can still affect other units. Now, this is basically, what are they called? Not Celestial Vindicators, Hallowed Knights. They have the same thing, where just like anytime they're targeted by something, they just say no. What's cool is the Hallowed Knights one actually says if they're affected by a spell, period, meaning your own spells trigger that, and there's a chance that your own stuff could fail, whereas this specifically says enemy. So I don't know why they went backwards with that one, but whatever. They also gain a unique spell. So Drakfoot wizards know the Blood Wah spell in addition to any others. Only one wizard can attempt to cast it in each hero phase. Rule of 1s were a thing back then. So Blood Wah, casting value of 8. Okay, that's the highest spell I think in the book. If cast, pick a Bonesplitterz unit within 6 inches. It can immediately pile in an attack as if it were the combat phase. So here's the thing. I like this. I like, first of all, the red tattoos, because they're from Akshi. They're using like corn blood soaked water to make their tattoos. That's why they're red. And that's also because it's cornate-ish. That's why they ignore magic on a 6, right? Isn't that rad? Anyway, I dig that. I think that's really cool. That's why I was normally first I was all about the ice stuff, and then I read this and I was like, ooh, no, that's super legit. Anyway, sorry, I'm digressing. Taking the magic-focused battalion that gives you casting bonuses out the nose, you get a spell that lets you pile in an attack. You're surrounded by your most elite infantry. That just sounds like the coolest thing. It increases your casting attempts, that kind of stuff. I like it. So I know it's probably going to change whenever they get a new book. I understand that. But for right now, I think it's pretty darn cool. Trying to think of other stuff. Yeah, the reason that's important, that spell specifically, where you get to pile in an attack, is because if we look at the Wargog Prophet, who we haven't looked at yet, his command ability is pick a Bonesplitterz unit within 15 inches. That unit can immediately pile in an attack as if it were the combat phase. This does not prevent a unit from attacking later again. So, that is pretty stinking cool. Now, what I'm curious about, and because I know there's a few people who do own and play Bonesplitters, the Wargog Prophet's command ability, right? That unit piles in an attack as if it were the combat phase. This does not prevent the unit from attacking again later. The Blood Wah does not have that last line where it says it does not prevent the unit from attacking again later. Nothing here makes me think that it would, because it happens in the hero phase, just like the Wargog Prophets thing. But if anyone knows, I did not find that in the FAQ. So if you could, let me know. But I like it. That means if you were to do this and bring a unit of the elite boars who can attack twice, you can theoretically have a unit that attacks 4 times in a single turn. Again, would you want to do that? I don't know. Why not? Why not? What's cool about these mega battalions? Thank you, Mogwai Man. You can stack them. I appreciate that. Is that the requirements are a Wargog Prophet, a Kopruck, which we already went through, and then you can take these like mega battalions, or you can take everything in your collection and be out the nose and be like play a 4,000 point army. But the last thing here is says you can also include any number of additional Bone Splitter units, so you can make any army a 1-drop by taking either one of these. There's another one here that has absolutely no interest to me whatsoever, but I like that. You know what I mean? So I can take my Wargog Prophet, my big block of dudes who are magic focused, and my elite infantry, and then also the boars that I'm building just for a flanking force to have something go up and grab objectives. I think that's rad. So I don't know. Hopefully Jack is listening at work and he can tell me which one to do. I'm leaning definitely towards the Drakfoot. I like infantry, like foot infantry armies with a little bit of cavalry support. And yeah, just the magic buffs and bonuses. Because here's the thing. I understand the people in the chat earlier who were saying where is it at? The Kopruck thing, where if your spell is a double, you blow up your own guys. Like, I totally get that, but that makes more die rolls more fun to me. So yeah. It was split between the two: ice weapons and blood tattoos. So, I don't know. I like them. I like them both. And that's kind of the direction I'm thinking of for my army. Now, the reason I brought all this up, and the reason I'm talking about it so much, is because when I stopped playing the faction many moons ago, your Battleline options were your basic Savage Oryx, who are super, not uninteresting. They don't have any super exciting rules. And the basic, and if you were, that was your Battleline. And then if you were Allegiance Bonesplitters, you got the basic Boar Boys who have hit and run. That's kind of their big thing, which was all right. It was fine. So you can keep getting your reroll charges because the Boars do that when they charge. But I didn't find it all that fun. I had all those units back when I had my first collection. I didn't find them to be engaging. I built them because I needed my battle line. But now that everything, if you don't know, we can actually take a look here. If you look at units, so we have 6 different unit options. Everything is Battleline in a Bonesplitterz army except for the big Stabbas. The dude's carrying the big stinking spike, which we'll talk about here in a second because I like him. And so this opens up so many more opportunities where if I wanted to do, say, the Kopruck, right? More boys. We need 2 units of those. We need 2 War Dogs. Boom. Oh, wait. I did that wrong. Right there. And, like, I could build that for a box of models, right? Because it comes with 20 more boys in a box and 2 heroes. And, like, I know there's a battalion points cost associated with that. Let's find it. Kopruck. 640 at its minimum. And, like, I can just build it up from there and have a blast. Well, that's cool. So a Kopruck with 2 blocks of 30 more boys is exactly 1,000 points. That is neat. That might actually be my 1,000 point army, to be honest with you. So, he said Big Stabbas is the funniest unit. Let's see if we can find a picture of it. Oh, I was already there. Bonesplitters. So here's the thing. The entire faction spawns from 2 infantry kits and a bunch of heroes. Sadly, a few of them are resin. Wargog Prophet's resin, I think. Yeah. Well, let's see. So here's our basic Savage Oryx. Here is, if you're ever curious, what the big Stabba looks like. Just 2 guys just hucking a huge spear. I think that is the funniest thing. What I find super funny, and actually I'll pull up the big Stabba's War Scroll because I had this thought a long time ago when there was kind of this debate going about like monsters versus hordes of infantry. This is before the GHB started doing missions that required you to have more models than your opponent, like the GHB, the first one. So the big Stabba, okay? A unit of big Stabbas is 2 of those guys carrying spears. So it's 2 bases of them, okay? each one of those bases is 4 wounds, because remember, each orc is 2 wounds each, so you have 2 of them carrying a big spear, 4 wounds. So a unit has 8 wounds total. Let's see, a unit has 2 or more. Abilities. Monster Hunter. Add D3 to the damage inflicted by Gork Tooth, which is their weapon, if the target is a monster. Let's talk about Gork's Tooth here. Range 3 inches. That's amazing. You can actually reach over your opponent's, or your army, and tap or poke your opponent in the eye with the giant spear. 2 attacks. 4 is to hit, 3 is to wound, -2 rend, which is big. I mean, a lot of these are going to miss, to be honest with you. But -2 rend is pretty tasty, and so is 3 damage. Just flat 3, no D3. It's add an additional D3 if you hit a monster, but 3 damage is just awesome. That is a hero level weapon. When your big stick that you're carrying around is bigger than, badder than anything that Archeon ever chosen has, that's pretty great. And I like him. What's interesting is the other rule here is called the Final Fling. If a big stab a team is slain, meaning a team is one of those 2 bases, they hurl the Gork Tooth at the foe. Pick an enemy unit within 3 inches of the big stabba's team before the model is removed. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. There is a battalion that lets you take just a ton of these. I don't actually know what that one does, but it's fantastic. Because here's the thing, like, right, a unit is 8 wounds, and that 8 wounds has an attack profile of 4 attacks, 4 is to hit, 3 is to wound, -2, damage 3 weapons. That is huge, right? If you were to think about it in terms of like a monster or equivalent like that. And then for every 4 wounds that unit takes, it does an additional D3 back at the guy who's trying to kill it. I like that. It just makes them sound so deadly. The Tiefruck is their battalion. You take 2 to 5 of those units, so you're going to have 4 or more of the actual big stabbers themselves. Crazed Monster Hunters. In your hero phase, pick an enemy monster. Each unit from a Tiefruck that's within 6 inches of the monster can pile in 6 inches and then make attacks as if it were in the combat phase. This is not stopping them from attacking again. So, yeah, I mean, if you're near a monster, in your hero phase, pile in attack for free. Again, Wargog Prophet can also give you an additional attack there. Right, because we use this ability to pile in your 6 inches to get more guys in. They attack with this ability. And then Wargog Prophet to do an additional one because they're already in combat. They don't need to pile in 6 anymore. And then when combat phase starts, then now that you're close enough, in theory with a 6-inch piling, you should have some guy within 3 inches. That triggers the Allegiance ability Monster Hunter thing, and you can do all kinds of cool stuff there. So, am I going to take that battalion? Let's see. Mogwai Man says, the problem with Tiefruck is that it's limited to the monster keyword. That's true. Yeah, it's I'd be more tempted if having a monster, I'd be more tempted if I could use those attacks on anything but the monster. Like if their monster still had to be around to get them riled up, but they could attack anything. But the idea that those attacks all have to be directed at the monster, I get it. Although I don't know, it's tough because here's the thing, right? I'm just gonna go on my soapbox here for a minute. For the longest time, we moved away from using monsters in our game, where it was very infantry focused. But what I have noticed, at least in my local area, is that monsters are coming back in a big way. Flesh Eater Courts is massive. Keepers of Secrets are everywhere. I see, in my local meta anyway, a lot of the big Night Haunt heroes. I played a Monster Mash list before. Lots of things that have the monster keyword in them, supported by a lot of infantry, but the rest of this army is about dealing with that infantry. And then your big premier monster hunters, the big stabbers, move in and mess stuff up. So, I don't know. I mean, I understand that on the national level or even international level, they're not great. And they lack a lot of tools. We could talk about that. But, I don't know. I think personally in my local area, I bet you I could go 2-1 at an event, which is that's my baseline. That's what I like to achieve when I go to an event. So, anyway, that's just based on what I see around me, and it's got nothing to do with anyone else. If you don't know what the Cunninruck is and you're curious about why I got rid of the army before I was ready to before. Well, I'll go through that with you here in 1 second. Sorry, I gotta take a quick hit of water. Savage Orc Arrow Boys, okay? They have a bow, which is 2 attacks. 5 is to hit, 4 is to wound, no rend, damage 1. Pretty unimpressive. Loads of arrows is the special ability. It says make 1 extra attack with each of their stinger bow if a unit has 20 more models. You can go up to a unit of 30, so you can get 90 attacks. Let's see, where is it at? So that is 90 attacks per unit. And then you take the Cunning Ruck, which is a really interesting ruck that we'll talk about. Mogwai Man says he hates it. Yeah, we're going to chat about it. I have limited intention of playing it. How about that? I'll probably build it eventually just to have it in my toolbox, just to make Jack feel bad, but no intention of going for it right away. So you have the unit that can pump out 90 shots. Keep that in mind. It requires 1 Savage Big Boss. He's a pretty... actually, he's an interesting hero. I'll talk about him in a second. But a Savage Big Boss, just a melee character. 2 to 5 units chosen in any combination. Orcs or Savage Orc Arrow Boys. Okay. The ability is Dead Sneaky. In each of your hero phases, pick 1 unit from the Cunning Ruck that is within 10 inches of this battalion's Savage Big Boss. That unit you pick can move as if it were in the movement phase, if it is more than 3 inches from an enemy, and is allowed to run, which is awesome. Free movement is great. Shoot as if it were in the shooting phase, or pile in an attack as if it were in the combat phase if it's within 3 inches. So you just get a free activation, basically. Of course, it's limited to Savage Boys and... Savage Orcs and Arrow Boys with your melee hero. And he can choose himself, as far as I know. Pick 1 from the Cunning Ruck. Yeah, he's within 10 inches of himself. It can still perform actions normally. So what you do is you take however many units you want of Arrow Boys, now that they're Battleline, right? Let's just say 3. In your shooting phase, you're getting 90 shots each. That's 90, 180, 270. And then in the hero phase, you get to shoot another 90 because you're picking one of those units of 30 and shooting as if it's in the hero phase. So that's brutal. So what would I say? It goes up to 90, 180, 270, and additional, so that 360. Am I crazy? Someone check my math. I'm not the best. I'm a YouTuber because I couldn't do math. Okay, so here's the thing. It's effective for the most part. It certainly made big waves when it first came out. 18-inch gun on that, so it's not going to reach all across the tables and that kind of stuff. Librarian of Hope. I'm not that good with the rules. How are Bonesplitters not freaking out and running department? You mean how come they're not winning everything? A few reasons. One, there's like I said, a few reasons. 18-inch range on the bow, not fantastic. Of those 360 potential shots, not everyone is going to be in range. Again, that's a theoretical math hammer number. Each block of 30 Arrow Boys. Hold on, Mogwai Man's checking me here. Each block of 30 Arrow Boys gets 90 attacks, plus you'll shoot in the hero phase, so that's 180 attacks. Right, from a single unit, but if you had 3 blocks of Arrow Boys to make your battle line, is what I'm saying. Regardless, it's a lot of attacks. I'm sorry if I got the math wrong. But you can just do... The reason that they're not sweeping the meta right now is because it's 5s to hit and 4s to wound, with a few ways to get reroll 1s. So that means you need to take your KFC chicken bucket of dice, dump it out, fish for all the reroll... Usually it's like reroll 1s. I think there's a way to get reroll 1s to hit here. Pick those out... dump them again, and now you're picking out only a third of them. The thing is that the battalion is mathematically amazing, however, practically terrible. By that I mean it's no fun to play. No top level player wants to do this. You're going to break your back leaning over the table, fishing out all those 5-ups. It's no fun for your opponent, but Also, when you go to an event, they are timed. Not only are they timed, but they are... a lot of times there is sort of a... what do you say? It's like a soft score for like, do you feel like you and your opponent played a full game? No opponent is going to look at that Cunning Ruck who did that to them and say, yes, my opponent was fantastic. We played a full game and we had a great time and I feel like I got to play, because there's no time for your opponent to play. Like, none. And so for people who want to win events, they need to think about the clock. They need to think about having games go at least near to completion, so they can at least tell their opponent they tried. That kind of stuff. And then it's just not fun. You know what I mean? Because you're rolling... what is it? 360 dice, we said. A third of those are getting through. Right? Sorry, I just got to respond to something here. So, sorry, a third of 360 is around 120, and then a wounding on a 4-up, right? So that'd be 60 attacks go through, and then they have to take their save roll on 60 attacks. You know, and that's, again, assuming it's all pointed at the same target. It assumes everything's in range, which it just won't be. So it's one of those things, mathematically amazing, practically terrible. And then we included stuff in the game like Lookout Sir, -1 to hit from ranged attacks. If you're targeting a hero who's standing within 3 inches of a unit of 3 or more, all of a sudden they're hitting on 6. That destroys the math on their hitting. It makes it real sad, real quick. So yeah, I think it's one of those things. So it's the dreaded Cunning Ruck. It's why people just didn't want to play against me, which is a real shame, unfortunately. But it's never something that I would take, because it's so, to put it lightly, anti-Doug. If I could say that as simply as humanly possible. Give me 1 second here. I'm just turning off. Carl freaking France, thank you so much for contributing. Got me $1. I love it. Thank you. Let's see here. 5+ will generate additional rolls. You give the Arrow Boys Brutal Beast Spirit, and they'll hit on 4s. Then give it Bone Spirit to reroll hit rolls of 1. That's what I was thinking. Bone Spirit. Then you give them Savage Attack from the Savage Big Boss. Yeah, let's talk about the Savage Big Boss. I actually like him. So it's interesting. Like I said, I mean, here's the thing: heavy shooting armies. I don't feel like I'm playing the game. None of that would be fun for me. Savage Big Boss. We'll cover him, and then actually maybe I will talk about the Brutal Ruck, because that one seems crazy. So Savage Big Boss, like I said, this is your melee hero in the lore. He's the one who runs the different rucks, the Gob Ruck or the Cunning Ruck, that kind of stuff. He has 5 attacks, 3 up, -1, damage 2. That's a pretty good profile, just for a melee guy. And then his command ability, we'll cover that. If a Savage Big Boss uses this ability, you can select a Bonesplitterz unit within 10 inches until your next hero phase. Whenever you make a hit roll of 6 or more for a model in that unit, it can immediately make 1 extra attack using the same weapon. It does not say combat phase or melee weapon, nothing like that, so it would work with your Cunning Ruck. So that's exactly what Mogwai Man in the comments of YouTube was talking about. It's brutal. It's no fun. Super fun when it's a bunch of like boars, you know, going ballistic in combat, but not so much when it's just you and your KFC bucket of dice. But his ability that I like, and the thing that I really wanted to touch on when I'm talking about this faction, is Let Me At 'Em. Savage Big Boss cannot wait to get in the grips of the foe, and this inspires any Bonesplitters nearby to get in the fight as soon as possible. After a Savage Big Boss has attacked, you can pick another Bonesplitterz unit within 10 inches. That unit can immediately pile in and attack as if it was within 3 inches. Attack. Okay, I'm sorry. I got crossed over on my lines here. Basically, you pick a unit in 10 inches, they pile in and attack. That's it. It's not an additional attack. They can't do it later in that phase unless they have something special that lets them do it again. But you just basically get to break turn activation, and so you get to have your hero come in, possibly with an artifact weapon, mess some stuff up, and then all of a sudden a unit nearby that's supporting them gets to pile in and attack. I like it. Let's see. Okay, I'm sorry, I was just catching up on the chat. And that's pretty much, honestly, those are pretty much it. The big things for the clan, for the Bonesplitters, War Clan, stuff like that. The other units I didn't touch on, I think the only things I didn't touch on were the basic orcs and the basic boar boys. They really don't do a whole lot. I think the original intention was to have them be your battleline options, but they figured out pretty quickly that More Boys and Boar Boy Maniacs are not that. They're not so ridiculously more killy that they need to be like an elite thing. So they made them Battleline too. And so it kind of took a lot of the wind out of the sails for these two units. Your basic orc, you know, he has a... What does he have? He has a little bone shield. That's what they call it. Gets a 5-up save in combat phase. Like, okay. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're still going to lean on that 6-up. Ignore everything anyway. It's whatever. Their attacks are not fantastic. They have half the damage output at best of the More Boys. Their big thing is that the unit gets bigger, you can reroll wound rolls. So, yeah, you can reroll wound rolls of 1 if it's 20 models. Reroll all field wound rolls if it has at least 30. Of course, I believe 30 is the max size, but maybe it's 40. Let's check. Okay, Savage Orcs. Yeah, it goes to 30. So the second you lose a dude, you can't reroll all field stuff. So I don't know. Kind of lame. I mean, they're great for capping objectives. They're 120 points, but so are the More Boys, and so it's like I feel like these are at least more fun. As for the Boar Boys, they're a little more interesting. You know, you have your board, you can move faster. They are, again, more defensive. They have their shields. Their thing is that they can retreat and charge in the same turn, which means you do have, theoretically, unlimited access to the boars re-rolling wound rolls the turn they charge, because you can just keep back it up, and charge back in, and just do that for infinity. You know, if you're going to have these guys, I'd think of them more as like a 5-man unit to go grab an objective late game. Not so much like when I think about the Boar Boy Maniacs, they get pumped because like, here's my wall of beef. We're gonna run in, charge, mess stuff up, attacking twice. You know what I mean? They're rerolling ones to hit. I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. But the Boar Boys, you just strip away a lot of the fun things. You get some utility in the movement in terms of retreating and charging, but I think it's pretty limited. So those two War Scrolls, I think they definitely need an update. If nothing else, I think they need to do something unique. You know what I mean? Maybe it's they can have bigger units, because everything here kind of maxes out at 30, which is actually really good, because you figure they're 2 wounds. It's 60 wounds. I love it. Map Power of the Wall. Yeah, they just don't offer something that the other more elite versions that are also now Battleline don't already do, right? You know, they're all similar enough that you're like, well, just choose the one that's more killy. Why would you take the one that's less killy? You know, if it was like you get a save of a 3-up, we'd be talking about something completely different, but not so much. So yeah, 32 mil bases don't help. Yes, that's a lot of dudes, a lot of board space. I don't know if I would like the Savage Orc on a 25. Their stance is so big, I think it would look goofy, but I understand like the ability to get more guys in or something like that. Or if their unique thing was spears, but the spears actually did something like they had more attacks per guy, I think that'd be really cool. They could fight in multiple ranks or that kind of stuff. You know, where they could have a different kind of offensive push versus these guys who have to be in 1 inch, but they just don't, and that's fine. It's fine. So as far as me building my army, what I plan on doing is I have, like I said, my box of boars. And I got those because it's the only thing the store had, basically, and I was excited. I wanted to test out contrast. I wanted to start using the browns that I had bought and building stuff up. What I'm planning on doing is basically going for... I'm torn. And this is where I go back and forth, because I like building thematic armies where I pick something from the book and basically dive into it with a paint scheme and that kind of stuff. And I'm torn between the Icebone War Clan and the Drakfoot, which is the one that kind of focuses on blues, which I already do quite a bit for my Stormcast, and the other one is reds. And so that might be a cool change of pace. So I'm kind of leaning towards the Drakfoot, which focuses on magic and that kind of stuff. I still have use for the boars and that, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. So let's see here. Rerolling Jack, dang, I missed the first episode of Making a Savage Orc. Lord, what a turd. I'm just going to look at the questions here, see if I missed anything. Thomas Larson, is it okay to ask a rules question here? You can. I don't consider myself a rules expert, but there's a lot of smart people here, and I'm sure we can all figure it out how to help you. You can call them the Knights Porsing. Icebone for the win. Now, having heard all that, yeah, like I said, I am leaning towards the Drakfoot, just to use some different colors, I think. Plus, the Icebone thing, in the lore, their boars are unique because they're gray, whereas I've already started painting mine browns because I have these paints, and I like them a lot. They're coming out pretty good. Need a dry brush to get some real color popping, but as far as what contrast claims to do, at least on furs, I'm good. I'm sold. So I like them quite a bit. Anyway, if I did do the Drakfoot, what I'm going to do is, do the red tattoos like they normally do, like the lore dictates. But then for the weapons, do like glowing molten rock, and so everything will have this kind of like that kind of warp glow effect that I do quite a bit. You'll see me do on the Gnashing Maw spell. I taught about it. The Beast of Chaos what are you called? Herdstone. I did it on that one. So, yeah. Let's see here. Somebody asked if they can ask a question. I hope they do. No, I didn't miss it. I'm not crazy. So, Mogwai Man, who is kind of, I guess, my just default Bonesplitters, he's my War God Prophet. Drakfoot is full fun rules-wise. I think I might go for that, especially because I like the infantry. Just to be very, very simple. So, obsidian weapons instead of flint. Sort of. Basically, if you've looked at... let me see if I can find a picture here. While I am looking up a picture of the kind of glow that I'm talking about, we're all going to answer a question from a gentleman here, Thomas Larson. If my Nurgle hero makes my enemy rerolling 6s to hit, and my enemy has a rerolling 1s to hit, how does these stack? How does the stack happen? Or does he just reroll his 1s and 6s in the same throw? Give me 1 second. I have had that question myself here. No, nothing's working. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a second if anyone wants to hop in and answer that, because I have a question about that as well, where basically if 2 effects make somebody re-roll something, how does that work? My assumption is based on everything else I know, is like if it's your turn, you get to dictate which rule takes precedent first, which is how it's always been, to my knowledge. I don't know why I can't find a picture of my Beast of Chaos to zoom in and show my Herdstone, because I want to show off the glow effect that I'm thinking is very specific. Here's a type of it, so I'll go to the screen share here. So this is on my my Comet, but if you look at that zooms in quite a bit. The rock here, I tried to make it like it's been heated by the comet coming down really hard. Yeah, so it'll go from black to this red char and have the glowing effect on the tips of all the weapons. So that's kind of the thing that I'm thinking about. Now, as far as the question we had from Thomas. You can't reroll a reroll. But my thinking is whoever's turn it is takes precedent. You get to choose. So someone correct me if I'm wrong in that. Thomas Larson. That's what he played with, so he just rolled them all together, 1s and 6s. Oh, that's a fun idea. Yeah, you just roll them all at the same time. So, anyway, I hope that works for you. Let's see. So anyway, yeah, that was the thing that I was thinking of when it came to the weapon. So they would have bright red war paint because corn and blood, and then their weapons would be a glowing heated rock type thing like that. There was a better picture from my herdstone that showed it because they're going to be stone, but I can't seem to find it in my vast history of all the armies I've ever had. Oh, here it is. Boop. There we go. Yeah, so this would go from the rock color like the herdstone has and bleed into that kind of glowing heat. So, yeah. Let's see. Ben Connor, if you have 2 effects that would both cause you to reroll the same die, the active player picks one. Yep, that's what I thought. Please, thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to do that. At this point, I'm done. Well, I can talk about rules some more, but at this point, I'm basically just chilling out and talking about what paint scheme I'm going to go for. Call them the head honchos. No, I got a plan. So I have Durgrog's, the Oracle, the big Oracle, and what did I have? My war clan was called the Gogkillers because Gog, G-O-G, means God. So they're gonna be hunting the biggest spirits, Sigmar himself, and that's kind of fun. So of course it will be led by a prophet because I'm, a guy who has a narrative channel and you can't not. Let's see. Talking about command traits here. Command traits. 1, Squirmy War Paint. Your general ignores mortal wounds on a 4-up instead of a 6, so it just makes his paint better. Normal wounds still go through, though. Prophet of Dwa. Whilst your general is alive, you can reroll the first failed battle shock test for friendly bone splitters in each battle shock phase. There is no range on that, so if anyone fails anywhere on the board and he's alive, boom, they get to reroll. The Great Hunter. If your general kills a monster in combat phase, they immediately pile in and attack again. I almost stopped reading after I heard your general kills a monster. I'm like, I don't want him to be in combat. Let's see. Killer Instinct. Each time you roll a wound roll of 6 or more for your general, that attack is resolved with a rend of 3. I'm not great on that. It's because we have realms artifacts now that give you rend 3 anyway. I don't care. Wawmonger. All friendly bone splitters unit add 1 to their charge rolls if they are within 10 inches of your general when they charge. So you stack that with their basic +2 to charge that they get from their banners, as well as the Spelligism +1. You can throw in Cardomatic Cogs if you're just like don't have enough speed, and all of a sudden the only thing this army really can't do is run and charge. To my knowledge, I can't see anything that makes you do that, but that's a lot of aggression. The reason why a run and charge is important is because if their enemy's not within 12 inches, you can't charge them. You can have a +12 to your charge roll, but if they're not in 12 inches, you can't declare the charge. So it's like whatever. Monster Killer. Instead of rolling on the monster turn table, your general can always choose a result. That also requires him to be in combat with a monster. It's cool. I think it's cooler than if he kills something, because he can choose, but I don't want a Wargard Prophet to be in combat with anything. So, of the ones here, Wawmonger and what do I like? I like Prophet of the Wa. I mean, it's crap bravery all around, so being able to reroll a battle shock test is pretty great. God Killers is awesome. Oh, thank you. Never into it. So, yeah, for that. Now, I actually wanted to talk about artifacts because this is one of the first books to have them, and there's in particular one very, very goofy one that I think is the greatest. It's not great in the gameplay sense, but it is great in the what's actually happening narrative sense. So once per game during your hero, so this is called the Big Wurgog Mask. Once per game in your hero phase, the wielder of the Big Wurgog Mask can unleash his power. When they do so, select the unit within 12 inches that is visible to the wearer. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. Okay, a little bit of arcane bolt with a mask. That's cool. The wearer can then continue staring at the unit. If they do so, roll a die. On a 3 or more, the unit suffers another D3 mortal wounds, but on a 1 or 2, the bearer is immediately slain. Continue repeating this until the wearer is slain, decides to stop staring, or the unit in question has been wiped out. So here's the thing. What you do is you strap this mask to a 100-point war doc, and you have him run up and stare at something that you just need dead. And so it does D3 mortal wounds, and you keep staring, and you keep rolling for that. You keep rolling for it, because every time you get a 3 up, D3 mortal wounds, D3 mortal wounds. It's one of those things that, like, in theory, it has an infinite number of mortal wounds. Now, is it going to do that? No, of course not. He's going to blow himself up. I think that is pretty great. So I think that's a super funny one. It's not game breaking. It's just one little dude who is going to kill himself. But I think that's pretty funny. As far as other artifacts that really stand out to me, Doc Juice has been a pretty popular one where each of your hero phases, the hero can drink the Doc Juice, and if they do, either he suffers a mortal wound on a 1. Sorry, you choose to drink Doc Juice, you roll a die every hero phase. On a 1, you suffer a mortal wound. On a 2 to 5, it's heal D3 mortal wounds. On a 6, it's heal D6 mortal wounds. It's alright. It's whatever. Let's see. Then you can add one of a Savage Trophy, add one of the Bravery characteristic. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. The Lucky Bone. The Lucky Bone. Reroll any run rolls, hit rolls, wound rolls, and save rolls and damage rolls of 1 for the bearer. Now, I have a question about this one, and maybe someone in the chat can help me out. Reroll damage roll of 1. Okay. So a damage roll would be, like, usually it's a D3 in this book, or a D6, something like that. Say it's a D3. Does that mean reroll the value of it? So on a 1 or a 2, the damage value is 1. Does that mean reroll literal the die rolls of 1? Or does it mean the value of 1, which would be a 1 and a 2? Very curious about that. Let's see. I'm just looking at the other ones really briefly to see if anything stands out to me. Honestly, not a whole lot does, because a lot of these are just like better melee weapons, and there are just better melee weapons than this in the realm-specific artifacts. So, the arcane treasures, I think, are where it's at, because you have the mask, Mork's Bony Bits. You can add 1 to this wizard's casting rolls for each enemy monster within 24 inches. 24 is really big, so if your enemy brings any monsters whatsoever, you're getting bonuses. On top of the bonuses you get for War Docs, on top of it for the Cop Ruck if I go that way. Like, you know what I mean? It's just buff after buff. You can reach a point where your opponent struggles to unbind things with that, so I like it. Each time the bearer successfully casts a spell and the casting roll is a double, they can immediately attempt to cast another spell. And it does not count towards the number of spells the wizard can attempt to cast. So that's kind of a cool thing. Juju whatnots. What I like about this is it compounds the things that the book is already doing, which I think good artifacts do, right? Like your good, I think the best artifacts in an army are saying, like, what is the army trying to do? Like, what is the gimmick that it has? How can we take that to the next level? So right now, almost every spell in this book, has a, if the roll is a double, you do blank. And what this is saying is, yes, absolutely, do another spell. Do it again, do it again. Let's see. There was something else here. Add 1 to the casting rolls. Big Wurgog Mask. Here's an add 1 to all unbinding rolls made by the wizard. In addition, the wearer of the Mystic Wall Paint can attempt to unbind spells if they are within 24 inches of the casting wizard. It doesn't matter so much now because they changed the range for unbinding spells, made it bigger. Let's see. The Great Zappa-Squig. The bearer knows an additional spell, but you have to randomly generate it. You can't pick. That's super funny. Let's see. There was... You know what I just realized? So I realized that the Drakfoot is 36 now with FAQ. Thank you so much. I did not see that. So it increases your range by 6 inches, I guess is kind of what it's saying. The Drakfoot Kopruck, where rolls of a double always succeed, is an interesting one because that way, even if your opponent unbinds the spell that you cast, right? Say you roll double ones, that one's pretty easy to unbind, obviously. But because it was technically a double and it was technically a success, if you had the Juju Whatnots, you do get to cast another spell. I like that. That's a fun one. That's pretty much it. Honestly, like those are the ones that really stand out to me. The Doc Juice is great if you want to heal your guy up. I think there's an argument for the Savage Trophy because Battle Shock is going to be an issue. And then the Mask is fun. Juju Whatnots. I don't know. I think this is just a lot of fun. So I'm very excited to jump into the army. It's, like I said, one of the ones that I regret selling. Here's a super funny one. This is never going to see the table, by the way, unless you play like a mega game where it's 10,000 points. And if you do, shoot me an email with pictures full of it. So the thing you get for taking each one of the Rucks plus a Wurgog Prophet is extra Juju War Paint. You can reroll all failed save rolls for models in a Savage War Clan. But the rerolls will only be passed on a 6, meaning everyone has a 6 up, and then you get to reroll everything. You want to talk about a bajillion dice rolls that do nothing but eat up time? Do that, and then just cut and rock shots. It's going to be... everyone in your gaming group is going to hate you. I think the only thing I didn't talk about was the Brutal Ruck, which I think is one of the saddest of all battalions to ever exist, which is a Savage Big Boss and 2 units in any combination of Savage Oryx or Boar Boys. These are all the basic dudes. Savage Swiftness. Oryx, you can reroll the dice when determining how far a unit from the Brutal Ruck runs. In addition, the Brutal Ruck Savage Big Boss and any unit that starts there move within 10 inches of the Big Boss. Always move an extra 6 inches when they run. You don't roll a die. There's no run and charge. If they had that, I think this battalion would be amazing. Right, they don't even need all the bonuses. Just let them run and charge. There's enough ways to get speed with the spells and stuff like that. It just is a bummer. This is supposed to be the melee powerhouse of the faction, and all it includes is a whole bunch of just speed bumps because it's your basic guys who don't put out hardly any damage. It's your boars that can charge and retreat, so they can't run and charge, they can't run and retreat or like that, so they have to like run to get the bonuses of the battalion, but then they're just not doing anything. All of this moves forward and then just does nothing, gets shot, and then none of the battalions help them be combat-y, which is the whole point of this thematically. And honestly, that is how I evaluate these kinds of battalions, where it's like, are you... I think the good battalions in the game express what's happening in the lore and giving you a good direction for your collection. Like the Kunnenruck, it is easily abused. I will not deny that. Here's the thing about the Kunnenruck, though, is you can take the Kunnenruck with absolutely no arrow boys. And it could still be interesting because you can let your basic boys move twice. Remember, you can move in the movement phase. You move in the hero phase as if it were the movement phase if there's no one within 3 inches. You stack that with the spell that lets them double their movement value. You've got some 20-inch moving boys. Your basic boys. You can go clog the enemy. They're just walking up. And so they can charge and do something that turn, as opposed to this. They can pile in an attack. They can shoot if they have arrow boys. Like, this is a cunning thing, right? They're being tricksy with moving and doing stuff in the hero phase where they shouldn't be. win. That's awesome. You know, in theory, you could have your big boss. What is it? So you attack with your boys in the hero phase. The big boss attacks and then gets to mess up turn activation because his ability, and then all of a sudden the boys are attacking right away again. Like, there's cool stuff to be had here that isn't just arrow boys. There's just not anything super interesting here. The most interesting thing about it is an oversight where it says any units that start their movement within 10 inches of the big boss can always move 6 inches. It doesn't say that anything within the battalion. So, like, if you have someone who's not in this battalion start within 10 inches of the big boss, they also get to just instantly run 6. But I think that's a oversight. So that's not super fun. And then the Snaga and the Coprock, I think, again, very thematic to what they do. This is the core magic nugget, if you will, of the entire Bonesplitterz force. It has the elite guys. They're getting the WA energy pumped up, and it shows in the War Doc. The Snagaruk operates independently, and they're a flanking force, so charging in is awesome. I love it. Rolling Jack, you're comparing an old book to today's standards of damage. Gotta wait for the new book. I don't think I'm comparing their damage. I'm just talking about what the battalions let them do. Like this is a cunning thing. Doing stuff in a different phase is just a cunning thing, but this battalion, the Brutal Ruck, isn't a brutal thing. So I don't know. I think I'm just talking about the value of these battalions in general. Not so much the damage output. Because, I mean, all these units, rend is rare in the army. That's why you have the teeth, the big teeth, big stabbers, for their rend and their multi-damage, that kind of stuff. But as far as, like, narrative battalions, that's what I'm talking about, is how well does a battalion play to the lore of the book while also making sense. And so I think everything but the Brutal Ruck does that. So anyway, that's my super ramble about the army. It's not going to crush stuff because there's not a lot of rend in the army. There's not a lot of multi-damage weapons or attacks. You're basically playing for the scenario and then using the abilities and stuff that you have to pick out stuff that can really thrash your boys. And how you do that is different, right? So the idea of picking out the things that thrash your boys could be magic focused. It could be monsters, obviously, is a huge theme within the book. That kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It is interesting. But, yeah, no, I mean, I kind of think their damage output is not vastly different from, like, Slaves to Darkness, where, again, not a lot of rend. But they have a toolbox based on movement, playing to objectives, and then working with turn activation and making it all kinds of wonky. So anyway, I'm excited about it. If anyone has any last minute questions for me, I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Look in the chat here. Okay. So yeah, let's see here. Real one's Jack, are you riding with me tomorrow to meet Vince? I want to be there with Warhammer Weekly and 2+ stuff, meet in person. The pressure is on. I don't know if I want to be in a car most of my Saturday. I'll be honest with you. So yeah, Vince from Warhammer Weekly is going to be in Olympia, Washington, and I'm on the east side of the greater Seattle area, so it's not a super short ride. I want to see how much I can get done today. Let's see. They also use a lot of obsidian, so the volcanic aesthetic could work well. That's awesome. Talking about the Drakfoot, I like it. Let's see. Librarian of Hope has a suggestion. Why not add some Stormcast bits as armor decor? Follows the hunting Sigmar logic. Be interesting. You think about that one. I think I thought of some bits. Most of the stuff I get is actually pre-built, so I don't have as many bits as my collection might lead you to believe. Let's see. Brennan just got here. Hello. Unfortunately, we're kind of winding down. I've been talking for an hour and a half straight. Let's see. Maybe an Aztec touch as far as aesthetics go. I'm going to pass. I like the classic Bonesplitterz look where it just has I'm going to focus on the tribal tattoos, that kind of stuff. And I think that's pretty much it. We already answered the question about rerolling a reroll. That's awesome. And we covered all the battalions, all the units. We did actually cover a lot more than I was expecting. Let me just triple check my notes here and make sure I didn't miss anything. As far as what I'm planning to do, I just want to build a whole bunch of more boys, which is the elite infantry. Regardless of whether or not I go with the cop ruck, I definitely want to have those because I like that unit. I like the Def Ride. I like the Savage Big Boss. I like the War Dogs are fantastic units to have. So it just kind of seems like those are already the things I like anyway. So why not build in that direction? And the paint scheme sounds pretty cool. So I'm thinking Drakefoot, doing some red effects, making stuff look like it's from the Realm of Fire. Might be kind of fun. So anyway, thank you all so much for joining me. The chat kind of died down, so I'll let you all go. Have a wonderful Friday. I hope you enjoy your weekend and get some painting done, and I will chat with you all next week. Thanks so much. Happy War.